Ring the notification bell. Press all.
California, you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 3:31 p.m. Eastern Time launch from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. My name is Andy Tran. I'm a production supervisor here at SpaceX. Welcome to the webcast for SpaceX's Transporter 2 mission. It's our second dedicated smallsat rideshare program launch and second launch, or 20th launch of 2021. For those of you who joined us yesterday, you know that we got all the way down to T-minus 11 seconds, but had to stand down from our launch attempt due to rotary aircraft entering the keep-out zone. We are expecting the airways to stay clear today and looking forward to having Falcon 9 deliver the 85 spacecraft and 3 Starlink satellites on board to orbit. Now this includes CubeSats, microsats, and orbital transfer vehicles, sometimes called space tugs, which will deploy their spacecraft after separating from Falcon 9. Today's launch is SpaceX's second polar orbit launch from the East Coast, and only the second polar trajectory since the late 1960s flown out of Cape Canaveral. A polar orbit is one in which satellites pass above the North and South poles as opposed to the equator. SpaceX has worked closely with the Air Force and the FAA to create a trajectory that meets the necessary safety requirements for flight. So far, everything's looking like a great day for a rocket launch at the Cape. And with liftoff in just under 10 minutes, let's take a closer look at Falcon 9. The 2-stage vehicle is standing about 229 feet tall, or slightly taller than a 21-story building. It's named after the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, and the number 9 indicates the number of Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. Today's mission is the 8th flight for this particular booster. That bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is the first stage. Its objective is to accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere to space and then separate from the rest of the rocket. From there, it will make its way back to Earth and target a landing on land this afternoon on Landing Zone 1, which is the pad that you see on screen right now. And if you're an Eastern Florida resident, you might even be able to see Falcon 9 over the ocean, or also hear one or more of the sonic booms as Falcon 9 makes its way back to land. On top of the first stage is the black carbon fiber inner stage. It connects the 2 stages and houses the pneumatic pushers that allow the first and second stage to separate during flight. And then on top of the inner stage is the Falcon 9 second stage, which takes the payload to its eventual destination in orbit. After the first stage separates about 2.5 minutes into flight, the second stage will then carry the 88 spacecraft to orbit. Similar to the first transporter mission, we'll be flying a fuel dome payload tray, which is essentially a small platform mounted on the back end of the second stage fuel dome that will release a handful of spacecraft today. This is worth mentioning as we expect this tray to obstruct one of our 2 MVAC views during flight. At the top of the rocket, you'll notice a large nose cone. This is called the fairing. Encapsulated inside the fairing are all 88 satellites, protecting them until the vehicle is outside of the Earth's atmosphere, at which point the fairing separates to expose the satellites to space. For today's mission, our fairing is making its 3rd flight, and we're also going to be attempting to recover the fairing halves from the water following landing with our chartered recovery vessel, HOS Briarwood. The chief engineer held a technical poll at T-minus 60 minutes, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go-no-go poll at T-minus 38 minutes. Since the T-minus 35-minute mark, Falcon 9 has been loading propellants. The vehicle is a bipropellant vehicle, which means it uses 2 types of propellants. For fuel, a refined form of kerosene called RP1, and for oxidizer, super chilled liquid oxygen, we also refer to that as LOX. Currently, RP1 is fully loaded on the second stage and almost fully loaded on the first stage. Liquid oxygen loading is currently underway. We're also loading helium into storage vessels on the first and second stages. We take cold helium and run it through heat exchangers on the Merlin engines, and this hot helium is used to fill the empty volume in the tanks created by the engine pumps pulling propellant out of the stage. A few seconds ago, engine chill began. This is where we opened the pre-valves between the first stage prop tanks and the 9 Merlin engines. This allows a little bit of cold liquid oxygen to flow into the turbopumps, bringing them down to a temperature close to that of the super chill propellant that will soon be flowing through the engines at liftoff. We're at T-minus 6 minutes and 30 seconds and counting. The vehicle is healthy. We're tracking no issues so far. The range is standing by to support, and the weather is green for today's liftoff. All systems continue to be go for an on-time liftoff at 3:31 p.m. Eastern
Stage
Time.
1 RP1 load is complete.
Today's launch will mark SpaceX's 20th mission of the year and the 127th mission to date. Of the 9 missions flown so far this year, 18 were on reuse booster and will be the 8th flight for this booster flying on today's mission. Now, if you look at all of the Falcon 9 missions SpaceX has flown to date, half have been flown on flight-proven boosters. Reusability allows SpaceX to fly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drives down the cost of space access. It also allows us to increase our launch cadence and provide more flight opportunities for our customers like those on board today's mission. In fact, last year, we launched more than any other launch provider in the world. If you've been keeping track, you know our first transporter mission launched a record-breaking 143 spacecraft. And while there are fewer customer spacecrafts on board today's compared to Transporter 1, we're actually launching more mass to orbit on this mission than the previous one. SpaceX is targeting 3 dedicated rideshare flights to sun-synchronous orbits per year, and we also offer opportunities for a ride to orbit on our Starlink missions, which launch every couple of weeks. Small satellites can ride to space on SpaceX's Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, as well as Starship in the not-too-distant future. We are under 5 minutes from liftoff. Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. In a few moments here, the strongback will begin to open up its clamp arms, and once open, it will begin to retract away from the rocket to its pre-launch position, about 2 degrees away from the vehicle. And as Falcon 9 lifts off, hydraulic arms will continue to pull the strongback further away to provide clearance for liftoff. So there was the call out for the clamp arms to start opening up. They are situated right at the bottom of the fairing there. The strongback is part of the transporter erector, also called the TE. The TE's job is to roll Falcon 9 out to the launch pad, raise it to a vertical launch position, also route power, fluids, and communication to both the rocket and satellite. The TE has a launch mount that the first stage is clamped to, and the strongback that is hinged to that launch mount. And you can start to hear the hiss and pop of pressure venting from the rocket and the plumbing in the transporter erector. At this stage, the strongback should be reclined to its pre-launch position, again 2 degrees away from the vehicle. We are just over 3 minutes until liftoff. The vehicle remains in good health. The first and second stages are almost fully fueled. Gaseous oxygen is also venting from the base of Falcon 9. That is the chillin of the Merlin turbopumps. About a minute before liftoff, you will hear the announcement that Falcon 9 is in startup, which means that the rocket's own internal flight computers are now autonomously controlling the launch countdown. This is a great shot of the fairing, and inside that fairing again are the 88 spacecraft as part of the Transporter 2 mission. Weather remains green. The range is also standing by to support. And as a reminder, if we don't get the opportunity to launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow at the same time.
Stage 2 lock load is complete.
And there was the call up for second stage LOX loading complete. That is the last of propellant loading. Falcon 9 is now fully fueled and ready for liftoff in about 1 minute and 40 seconds. You can start to see some white clouds starting to form around Falcon 9. That is normal and expected for us at this stage in the countdown. When the dense cold liquid oxygen meets the warmer ambient air of Florida, it begins to condense and form the white clouds that you see on screen.
Falcon is in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup. You can start to hear some of the cheers here in Hawthorne. The first and second stages are beginning to pressurize for launch.
Falcon 9, Transporter 2, LD is go for launch.
That was the launch director giving the final go for launch. We are T-minus 30 seconds from liftoff. Let's tune into terminal count and watch as the Transporter 2 mission begins.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
First stage chamber pressure is nominal.
We are T-plus 42 seconds into flight. Falcon 9 has cleared its tower, and we're currently throttling down in preparation for max Q. That should be coming up in about 20 seconds. Max Q is where the vehicle will experience the highest amount of aerodynamic pressures.
Falcon 9 is supersonic. Max Q.
And you heard the call out. We've passed the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure. Falcon 9 is now headed south along the Florida coast. All is looking good with the first stage trajectory. We have 5 events coming up in quick succession in about a minute. The first is main engine cutoff, also known as MECO, followed by stage separation, where the 2 stages will separate from one another. The first stage will then perform a flip to head back towards Florida, and the MVAC engine on the second stage will form second engine start 1 and ignite that MVAC engine. Then the first stage will also begin its first of 3 burns, the boost back burn. And this is a view from the top of Falcon 9 looking down towards the 9 Merlin engines at the bottom of the first stage.
Stage separation confirmed.
And there you saw on screen, we had successful stage separation. The first stage started performing its flip maneuver. And the boost back burn should be ending in about 25 seconds.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
And there was confirmation of a successful boost back burn. Again, that is the first of 3 burns for the first stage. Coming up next is fairing deploy in a few seconds here. from the top of the second stage.
Burn separation confirmed.
And off come the two fairing halves, and they have separated and fallen away from the vehicle, exposing the 88 spacecraft to the vacuum of space. As a reminder, the recovery vessel HOS Briarwood will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today from the water. So we are about T plus 4 minutes and 20 seconds into flight. We have a couple of views on screen. On the right-hand side is a view of our second stage Merlin vacuum engine, also known as the MVAC engine. It's currently in the first of 2 MVAC burns. This burn should last for until the T plus 8 minute and 24 second mark. About another 4 minutes left on this burn. And the next milestone will be for the first stage to perform its entry burn. That's what you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen. Falcon 9 needs to execute an entry burn to slow itself down before hitting the dense parts of the atmosphere. And without this burn, relying on the atmosphere alone to slow Falcon 9 down would put unnecessary strain on the rocket.
Vehicle is on a nominal trajectory.
The call out for a nominal trajectory. Everything's looking great so far on the Transporter 2 mission. You also notice some honeycomb-like structures have deployed on the first stage on the left-hand side. Those are our 4 hypersonic grid fins positioned at the base of the inner stage. They help to orient the rocket during re-entry by moving the center of pressure. There's also some plumes of gas coming out. This is cold nitrogen gas, which helps with attitude control. Both are essential to make sure that we have a nice targeted landing back on landing zone 1 later on in today's mission. The second burn, the entry burn, is coming up in about 30 seconds. Watch for that on the left-hand side. You can also see there's a speedometer of sorts on the bottom left-hand side. That tracks the speed of the first stage. And when we begin the entry burn, we'll start to reduce the speed. And shortly after the entry burn ends, we'll hit the denser parts of the atmosphere and also begin to further reduce our velocity as the first stage continues to make its way back towards Earth.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn start up.
There's the call out, and you can see on screen 3 Merlin engines have relit and are currently slowing down the first stage. This burn is expected to last for another 15 seconds or so.
Vehicle on a nominal trajectory.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
And successful completion of our second of 3 burns. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to be attempting to recover the booster for an 8th time back on land at landing zone 1. The first stage has 1 more burn left, the landing burn. It begins just before we touch down and provides the booster with a soft descent before we land. At the same time Falcon lands, we are expecting Sequel 1 of our second stage. That's second engine cutoff. And shortly after that, we'll be entering a coast phase. And you can see the Florida coast and landing zone 1 are approaching on the left-hand side of the screen as this booster makes its attempt to land for an 8th time. This is a great shot of the first stage coming down with its landing burn.
Stage 2 internal guidance.
Stage 1, London light deploy.
That was as smooth as I'd seen it. We had phenomenal shots all the way through the landing burn. You heard the sonic booms. This booster has landed for the 8th time. That is the 89th recovery of an orbital class rocket.
Stage 1 nominal landing confirmed.
And what a way to start
Nominal
off the
orbit
Transporter
insertion.
2 mission. At the same time, we did have successful second stage, second engine cutoff, and confirmation of a nominal orbital insertion. We are now going to coast for the next 45 minutes or so while we wait for second engine start 2. Just a few minutes after that, we'll begin to deploy the 88 spacecraft on board this mission. We will see you back here around the T plus 53 minute and 30 second mark.